Our family's exhausted. It's been a long 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years. We're obviously thankful that the jury found Kenan not guilty. We know the jury has worked very hard, and we're appreciative of their service to the community. There are no winners in this case. Kenan has been living under a dark cloud for a little over 2 years, and he's been falsely accused of a serious crime. And in addition, the Kingston family's lost a loved one, and we're all sorry for that. We're thankful to our family and friends who've stuck by us and given us a lot of strength and support. And we're thankful to Charlotte. They've been very hospitable to us, and I guess the final thing is that Kenan was defending his girlfriend at the time, and now his wife. And during this trial, he was defending his character. That's all I have to say.
Just long term. Obviously, he now gets to move on with his life. What did you say to him kind of in the courtroom after the verdict was handed down?
What I said to him was that you've got your life back, and that's really what's happened. And let me just say also that Doug Gay is exactly right. There are no winners in this trial, and we're not here to sort of say we won and the Kingston family lost, because everybody lost in this case, and especially the Kingston family. And we meant what we said during the trial. In no way did we mean to say or do anything that would deprecate their loss, because it's a loss that I can't even imagine bearing. So I just want to make that clear to all of you.
During the trial, he was portrayed basically as a lecherous drunk. Is that going to be difficult for the family to get past?
Well, you know, I would beg to differ with you about how he was portrayed. I think what we did was we simply called in witnesses who testified about his conduct on that night, and one witness who testified about his conduct in similar circumstances. But even that witness said he was a wonderful guy until he reached that tipping point. So I regret that we had to bring out that evidence, and I'm sure it was painful for the family, but the jury needed to understand the full context, and that's why we did that. And in no way did we mean to attack him as a person. It's just that the jury needed that context.
Do you think this case came down to the perceived character of either man?
You know, I honestly don't. I think what it came down to is the fact that this all happened in 6 seconds. And I don't think any of us can say what we would have done if we had seen what Kenan-Gay saw happening to one of our loved ones at that moment in time. And I think that's what the jury understood. That's the truth of this case, is that you put any of us, especially us men, in that situation, and who's not going to react and try to do something to help their loved one? I don't think there's very many people who would.
David, how does your client get his good name back?
Well, I think it's a process, and I think it starts today with the not guilty, and from here on out, he's going to have to live his life the way he lived his life before those 6 seconds on March 3rd, and I think he will do that, and I think over time, people will come to understand that the Kenan-Gay who was portrayed in that courtroom is the Kenan-Gay who existed before March 3rd of 2012, and he will be the Kenan-Gay that exists after today.
Some of the jurors were wiping away tears while the verdict was read. What do you read into that? Maybe that they didn't like the decision or liked the decision?
You know, I'm not going to sit here and speculate on why jurors were emotional. I think the bottom line is it was an emotional case, and there are no winners in this case, and I think the jury was very, very tuned into that. We certainly tried to make that clear, and if they were emotional, well, that's understandable because of all the emotions in the case.
In your judgment, what's the key piece in your judgment that probably cleared it in their eyes?
What's that?
What key piece of evidence do you
Oh,
think?
what key? I don't know that there was a key piece of evidence. I really think it was the fact that everything happened so quickly, and that all he was doing at the moment he acted was trying to protect Liz.
You alluded to the fact that machismo sometimes takes over when we're in those kinds of situations. Is there anything to be learned from this case?
Oh, I think one thing to be learned is that drinking to excess is never a healthy pursuit, and I think another thing to be learned is that bars like Ed's Tavern need to pay a little bit closer attention when somebody is that intoxicated and keeps getting served.
What does this verdict do to the lawsuit against Mr. Gay and Ed's Tavern?
Well, the burdens of proof are different. As I said to the jury, that case will go on, and this really has no impact on that case at all.
Do you represent him in that case also?
Hold on one second.
You talked to Kenan-Gay right after. I'm assuming he declined to comment to us out here.
Yes.
Did you instruct him not to say anything?
No. He just said basically, I can't talk to the media right now. He's emotionally spent, as anyone can understand.
What did he say to you personally, either Ms. Pfeiffer or Mr. Rudolph?
He said, "Thank God."
Now, the prosecution made a big deal about Kenan leaving the scene afterwards. They came back to that again and again. Mr. Ashendorf's opening line in his closing was, "Heroes don't run away." In the end, that did not prove pivotal to the jury. Why?
Well, first of all, we never portrayed Kenan as a hero, and he never claimed to be a hero. So that was sort of a false label. He never said that he was doing anything heroic. He was simply reacting to a situation that he saw unfold before his eyes in a split second. So it wasn't a heroic thing. It was just what I think almost anyone would do in that circumstance. And second of all, I think the jury recognized that. And they recognized that he was a 23-year-old kid who suddenly saw somebody laying in a street and panicked. Any of us who have had 23-year-old boys understand that they are not emotionally developed, and it was understandable that he would panic under those circumstances.
And was the performance of the two 25-year-olds, Mr. and Mrs. Gay, on the witness stand, with the verdict of the jury?
Well, I don't know how key it was to the verdict. What I will say is that I thought both of them were entirely credible, human. They answered the questions that they were asked. There was no evasiveness. They testified honestly. When one of them didn't remember what the other one said, they admitted that. So I just can't imagine two people of whatever age coming across as well as they did, and really presenting themselves as people as well as they did, because that's what they did. They opened themselves up to that cross-examination, and I think anyone who watched that testimony understands that they were real and that they were sincere. And as I said to the jury, they're the best of us. They're what all of us hope our kids will grow up to be, and I meant that sincerely.
David, did it boil down to the jury believing Kenan and Liz versus the witnesses from the bar?
Jim, I said earlier, I think it really boiled down to the 6 seconds, how quickly it all happened. Because regardless of where you put a foot or whatever, there was just never any maliciousness involved. There was never any malice in Kenan's heart or in his mind. All he was doing was reacting to Liz being grabbed by this person.
He prayed that emotionally spent. Are there plans underway for you, him, or any of you to have to do an interview with one of the networks this afternoon?
No, not at this point, and I don't know that'll ever happen.
So in your mind, will we ever know if he was pushed in front of the car or stumbled?
Well, I don't think that was quite the choice. I think the bottom line was, as I said to the jury, he went out of that bar, Kenan and Mr. Kingston, with a great deal of momentum. and then they go down that step. And if any of you ever been to Ed's, it's a decent sized step. It's not a little step. And when you're flying out of a door that was open, and the door was open, and you then go off a step, you sort of launch a little bit, and there's momentum going. And so, once you release somebody, that momentum is going to continue. So I think it was a combination of that and Mr. Kingston having a .29, because Mr. Gay could stop in a couple of feet, but Mr. Kingston couldn't. Yes.
He prayed that night, and he said, "Thank God today."
He did.
How important was prayer for him?
I don't know that I can answer that question. What I can say is that his religious beliefs are important to him, and that what you didn't see in court was him saying the Lord's Prayer in that car over and over and over again for 45 minutes. You can't watch that video and feel anything other than the fact that he was devastated at what had happened.
Still devastated.
He's still devastated. Well, you saw his reaction to the verdict. I mean, there was no glee at his reaction. It was just sadness.
Does he have a message for the family of Mr. Kingston? If you asked the prosecutor, they can comment. But
Well, what I can say is that Kenan has told me numerous times that he has thought about Mr. Kingston and his family, if not every day, almost every day since then. And that very night, when he heard what had happened, he felt sick. And I don't know that I can really express to the Kingston family how Mr. Gay felt adequately to convey that. But this was not something that he ever anticipated, imagined, or wanted. And if he could bring back Robert Kingston tomorrow, he would do it in a heartbeat. So we're not worried about the civil suit. None of that stuff matters. What matters is that someone has lost their life, and I think Kenan feels that very, very strongly, regardless of the verdict here. Hold on a second. Yes, he's going to become a lawyer. He's going to still have to go through the character committee. The fact that he was acquitted here doesn't mean that his character is still not going to be questioned. But certainly that's his goal, and that's what he intends to do.
We respect the jury's verdict. The jury represents the people of our community. We as prosecutors have a job to present all of the available evidence to the jury, to the people of our community. We continue to believe in the jury system. We have great faith in the jury system. The Kingston family is having a hard time right now, and we certainly sympathize with the Kingston family. This has been a very difficult couple of years for them, and a very difficult 3-week period. We could take a couple of questions.
if you talk to the family, can you just talk about maybe what they said about this verdict?
Well, understandably, it's not the verdict that they wanted, and they're having a hard time dealing with it, but they have been informed through the whole process, and I think they understand what has happened, and I think that they're able to move forward at this point.
When involuntary manslaughter was added to this, did you think that there was a chance for that?
For the jury to decide
Yeah.
involuntary manslaughter. The case was one of the most unusual cases of homicide, if not the most unusual, that any of the people in the courtroom have ever seen, from the judge to the attorneys. And the law is just very complicated in this area. The law and the evidence supported both of the crimes that the jury was given on the verdict sheet, and the jury obviously decided that the defendant was not guilty, but the law certainly supported and the evidence supported the jury being able to consider both of those charges.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what made it so unusual? You guys are both veteran prosecutors. Why did this case stand out in your eyes?
From just what happened that night, nobody has ever seen a case quite like that. From what happened outside the bar that night, that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Kingston was as unusual as a crime can be.
In your mind, what did this verdict come down to?
Well, I think you'd have to ask the jury ultimately what they based their decision on, but they were a very attentive group. They were a very studious group, and I think that we have confidence that they based their verdict on what they saw throughout the case, the evidence in the case, the witnesses they heard from, and ultimately they made the decision that they felt like was appropriate after considering all the evidence.
Do you think if you had a different...
Most of their witnesses were basically kind of folks, most folks who have their son or daughter involved. That's not the kind of situation that you guys typically are in or find yourself in a homicide. How big of a challenge was that?
Well, every case is different, as you know, and this case presented a great deal of character witnesses speaking on behalf of the defendant, and of course, it's very difficult when the evidence includes evidence that the defendant had a certain, character history, and the jury, of course, is to consider all of the evidence before they make their decision.
Did you feel that Robert Kingston was also on trial? His character?
Well, in every trial, it's quite often that the victim of the crime is, quote, put on trial. So that's not unusual to see, and it, certainly in some respects happened in this case, but that's not unusual.
Do you think it would be different if you had a different defendant, someone who was not a law student, and witnesses that were not now attorneys?
Well, I think as Jay said about the victim in any case, it matters who the defendant is, and certainly that's why the defense chose to put on the evidence that they did about his character, about people that had known him growing up. Every case is different, so if you switch out any number of variables, you could get a different result. And so obviously the background of the defendant is a huge variable in any case, so certainly there...
Do you think there was sympathy from the jury, though, that this was a young man trying to be an attorney, trying to lead a good life? He was not a real career criminal.
I think that the jury, and again, you'd have to ask them what they felt, but I think they probably felt sympathy for everyone involved. As the judge said when we were concluding this afternoon, there are really no winners in this case, and I think the judge made it very clear that for both families, this is an ever-changing event. So I believe that the jury followed the law and didn't base their verdict on sympathy, but I think they probably felt sympathy for everyone involved in the case, because it's sad for both families involved.
When the jury